Welcome back to Mayo Clinic Radio. I'm Dr. Tom Shives.
And I'm Tracy McCrae.
This past November, the major U.S. tobacco companies were required to begin running court-ordered television and newspaper ads that tell the American public the truth about the dangers of smoking and secondhand smoke. The ads, called Corrective Statements, will run for 1 year on the major television networks during prime time and will run in print and online in about 50 newspapers.
These corrective statements are part of the 2006 ruling in a Justice Department lawsuit which sought to punish cigarette makers for decades of deceiving the public about the dangers of their product. So why did it take more than 10 years for these ads to run?
We'll find out.
Here to discuss is Emeritus Director of the Mayo Clinic Nicotine Dependence Center, Dr. Richard Hurt. Welcome back to the program. We're glad you said yes to joining us.
Glad to be here.
Dr. Hurt, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
You know, you are retired, or emeritus, as we say at the Mayo Clinic, but I think you're probably as active as ever in the fight against smoking and big tobacco?
Well, not as active as ever because the treatment center that we have here, the Nicotine Dependence Center, is still going on, and I don't really have a lot to do with that in the day-to-day operations. I'm involved with Global Bridges, which is an international organization we formed many years ago to help people around the world understand how to treat tobacco dependence and advocate for tobacco policy change. So I'm still on that executive team, and I'm doing tobacco trials in Florida as an expert witness.
So the big tobacco companies have been found guilty, correct? And guilty of what? And tell us the whole scenario. How did this start?
Well, the suit was brought back in the time of Bill Clinton, when Bill Clinton was president, against the major tobacco companies because of their decades of deceit and basically lying and deceiving the public. And Judge Gladys Kessler was the judge in that case, and she's a federal judge in Washington. And the trial took many months to complete, and they were found guilty of violating the racketeering statutes, the federal racketeering statutes. So they were found guilty of being racketeers, basically. And one of the rulings that you made, among many others, was that they had to come clean and tell the public what they had previously been secret and kept secret and hidden from the public. But also they had a public relations campaign to basically mislead and deceive the public. So these ads are what they call corrective statements, but I like to think about it as basically admissions of guilt that they had been deceiving the public all these decades. And those were mandated in 2006, and it's been now 11 years,
yeah.
11 years since because...
Was the first cases, they were in the mid-90s? What year was that?
Well, the first big case was in Minnesota in 1998.
Okay.
That was the largest big case. But then the second largest case was the Department of Justice case that we're talking about now. But that would not have happened had it not been for Minnesota, because Minnesota caused the release of previously secret documents that no one had ever seen before. And so a lot of the evidence that was put into the Department of Justice case was there because of Minnesota. Had Minnesota not occurred, this would never have happened.
Secret documents?
Secret. Thousands. There are now over 70 million pages of previously secret documents available on the websites called the Legacy Library at the University of California, San Francisco. Over 70 million pages of previously secret documents that tell what they knew, when they knew it, and what they did about it.
In other words, they knew how harmful tobacco smoking was, cigarette smoking was a long time ago, but withheld the information from the public.
They did, and they knew this back in the early 1950s, 60 plus years ago. And not only did they not tell the public what they knew, they had a public relations campaign to create doubt about what they call the health charges without actually denying it. Those are their words that they use. So they not only did they keep it secret, they had a public relations campaign to mislead the public. And that's what these documents, these ads are trying to do to correct some of that. And, you know, you talk about 10 years ago that the case was, they were found guilty in 2006. The old adage is that give them an inch and they'll buy another decade. And that's what they do.
Well, I can remember seeing an ad years ago that said more doctors smoke Camels than any other brand. So, I mean, if the doctors are smoking, it must be okay, huh?
Well, that was part of their ad campaign, and of course that evolved into Joe Camel. It evolved into Virginia Slims, all the other things that they did over the years to basically market their products.
I don't know if this is going to be fair to say or not, but in 1998, when the Minnesota court case was going on, that's when I first became aware of who you were. Tell me what your role was in that case.
And what happened to the money?
Yeah, I don't want to say, I was trying to watch his blood pressure. I didn't want to ask him that. But I think a lot of people cast you as some sort of anti-smoking zealot, which you probably would passionatally say yes to, but tell me what your role was in 1998.
Well, zealot is probably not the word I would use. I'm really more interested in helping people to stop smoking or helping people never to start. And that's where my drive is, helping people to overcome this serious addiction. I was the first witness in the Minnesota tobacco trial, and I was granted permission by the Mayo Clinic Board of Governors and eventually from the Board of Trustees. The Executive Committee of the Board of Trustees had to approve my participation because it was very unusual for a male physician to be involved in a court case in which no direct patient was involved. But we made the case that this was in Minnesota, is in our backyard. It would affect all of the patients from Minnesota and many others outside of that. And it was the right thing to do because had we not been present in the Minnesota tobacco trial as addictions experts, then our absence would have been conspicuous and the tobacco companies made a big deal of that. So we were approved to do that. So I was the first witness in the Minnesota trial in 1998.
Is it when you found out about those 70 million pages of evidence that you realized how bad they were or how bad the tobacco companies were, or did you already know that?
Well, we already kind of knew that they were bad people because they were promoting a product and they knew this, and we knew that they knew this, that if used as recommended by the manufacturers, kills over 63% of the customers. Think about that a second. So this is a product that if it's used as recommended by the manufacturer, kills almost 2/3 of the people who use it. And you can't name me another product that does that. You can't name me another product that fails over 60% of the time and still is on the market, much less one that kills so many people. It kills 500,000 people a year in the United States alone. So we knew things like that. But what we didn't know are how sophisticated they were in manipulating the nicotine in the cigarettes. The secret of the Marlboro was not the theme from the Magnificent Seven or the Cowboys or all that stuff. The secret of the Marlboro was adding ammonia to the tobacco to freebase the nicotine.
Which happened by accident, right?
No, they had.
Well, I thought they put the ammonia in between the sheets of tobacco for some reason, and then they said, "Wow, this isn't that you told me that a long time ago."
There's one executive from the forgotten which company said we put ammonia in there for the roasty toasty taste. He actually said that with a straight face in the Minnesota trial, but the ammonia raises the pH of the tobacco, and it freebases the nicotine. They were freebasing nicotine before the drug culture knew how to freebase cocaine. And that was so once everybody else, all the other companies figured out that Philip Morris was making more money, selling more cigarettes by adding ammonia, guess what they did? They all did the same thing.
So what happened? There was a big monetary settlement in the Minnesota suit against the big tobacco, and the money, as I recall, was supposed to be used for anti-smoking campaigns and to help people stop smoking. It didn't happen, did it?
It only happened a small percentage. There were a little over $200 million set aside for a new nonprofit organization, which was originally called MPAT, M-P-A-A-T, which is now called Clearway. And that is still an existing nonprofit in Minnesota that has a life expectancy of 25 years from the time of the settlement. The rest of the money, the other $5 or $6 billion, a very large percentage was go to the public, to the Department of Health for prevention campaigns. And during Governor Pawlenty's governorship, they took that money and plugged the deficit in the budget. And then later on, they took the rest of the money that was coming in every year to plug holes in the budget. And so the money, the politicians in the state took the money basically and used it for budget reduction.
All right, Dr. Richard Hurt, Emeritus Director of the Nicotine Dependence Center. We're talking about big tobacco and the corrective ads that are coming up soon. Time for a short break, but when we come back, we've got a myth or matter of fact.
Yeah, electric cigarettes, e-cigs.
E-cigarettes
can help you quit smoking. We'll find out.
Welcome back to Mayo Clinic Radio. I'm Dr. Tom Shives.
And I'm Tracy McCrae.
We are with the Emeritus Director of the Mayo Clinic Nicotine Dependent Center, Dr. Richard Hurt. He's told us about the lawsuit against big tobacco and the corrective statements, the corrective ads that are going to be coming soon, both on television and in print.
Oh, they're already out.
Are they?
I've seen them.
You've seen them.
Mm-hmm. That's why I asked him.
Better, huh?
I was sitting behind him at the basketball game, and I said, "You need to come talk to us about those ads." That's why we're here.
I prefer to call them admissions of guilt or confessions, not corrective statements. They're confessions of what they knew, when they knew it, and what they did about it.
Here's our myth or matter of fact, Dr. Hurt. Electronic cigarettes can help you quit smoking. Is that a myth or a fact?
It's really a myth, and there have been a few studies that have studied it in randomized trials, and there are just a few, and it has been tried against other more conventional things like nicotine patches, and it doesn't seem to help people stop smoking compared to placebo or compared to other well approved and well known therapies. The problem with e-cigarettes is that there's not just one variety. There's hundreds of different varieties, and they deliver nicotine in different ways and different amounts. So until they're proven to be both safe and effective, those are the two standards we use for any drug to be approved for use. Until it's proven to be both safe and effective in helping people to stop smoking, then we're not going to use them. Does that mean some people use them and can stop smoking? Well, some people do that. Some people use hypnosis to stop smoking, and some people use acupuncture. But none of those three things I just mentioned have been shown to be effective compared to placebo. And so the safety part of it is, are e-cigarettes safer than smoking a conventional cigarette, a Marlboro, Camel? Yes.
They are.
They are. Well, they don't have as much stuff in them. Cigarettes have over 7,000 chemicals, over 60 known carcinogens.
Cancer-causing agents, yeah.
E-cigarettes have some of that stuff, but much less than conventional cigarettes. So I usually say, well, are e-cigarettes safer to use than Marlboro or Camels? Yes. Are e-cigarettes safer to use than just breathing air? No, they're not.
Of course not.
Well, of course not, because they don't have nicotine. They have some nitrosamines. They have some other things in them, and so there's no regulation of them. So we don't know exactly what all is in them.
So you were a director of or co-director of the Mayo Clinic Nicotine Dependence Center for years, but I always liked your story about you're a former smoker. How and why did you quit?
Well, I stopped smoking dozens of times, sometimes for as long as 30 minutes, sometimes for a half a day. I didn't finally stop smoking for good until
2 packs a day, though, right?
2 to 3 packs a day.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Marlboro.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I alternated Marlboro and Bel Air because you can't smoke 3 packs of Marlboros a day and have your mouth feel so
fresh.
I had to smoke a menthol in between because that kind of freshened things up. So I would alternate between a Marlboro and a Bel Air. So at night I'd go to bed. I'd have my last cigarette. I put that pack on the nightstand on the bottom. I put the other one on top of it. I put my Zippo lighter on top of that. Put my glasses around them, and so in the morning it was easy. Glasses on, lighter up. I didn't have to remember which one I had had the night before because it was always on the bottom. I mean, it sounds crazy, but
you had a system.
Yeah, in Kentucky. You grew up in Kentucky,
but
right?
But that's the way people who make sure they have their supply who have a dependence on a drug. You make sure you got it right. And anyway, so I stopped smoking by going to the smokers clinic at Methodist Hospital.
Oh, when you got to Rochester, were you on the staff?
I smoked right through the time of my college, medical school, internship, 2 years in the Army, 3 years of fellowship here. And I stopped smoking dozens of times in between, but finally stopped smoking on November 22nd, 1975. It was Saturday. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. I was home. It was a life-changing event for me. And the two heroes, well, actually three heroes, Dr. Hepper, Norm Hepper,
pulmonologist. He was a lung specialist.
He's a pulmonary physician who's founded the Smokers Clinic. And then Rosalie Ciarto and Bud Matson were the two people that managed and directed the Smokers Clinic. It was a life-changing event for me.
And that was, you were how old, do you remember? You were what,
31.
31.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it so hard to quit?
Well, it's so hard to quit because what happens in the brain are the neuroreceptors, the little receptors in the brain get accustomed to these very high doses of nicotine that you take 20 to 30 to 40 times a day, and they get used to that, and therefore they increase in numbers. What happens is they get upregulated. So biologically, there are more receptors in the brain of people who are smokers than there are non-smokers. All of us have the receptors, but smokers end up with more of them. So if you don't feed them what they want, then they object to that withdrawal symptoms, irritability, anxiety, frustration. And those receptors are there, and once you stop smoking, they do reduce back to the same number you started out with, but it takes a few months for that to happen. But they never really forget what this is all about. So the cravings can come later on after a person stops smoking, and they can occur and be very, very intense.
But we've got a lot better ways to help people stop smoking now at the Mayo Clinic Nicotine Dependence Center. And the success rate, it continues to go up, doesn't it? I mean, it's pretty good.
It's very good, but we're dealing with a drug addiction or drug dependence that's very difficult because of the cigarette being the most efficient drug delivery device that's ever been invented. It gets nicotine to the brain within 5 heartbeats. I mean, it's like a super highway to the brain. Plus, people who are smokers smoke 20 to 30 to 40 cigarettes a day. So the doses you get over a period of time are enormous, much more than you get from any other drug of dependence. So the success rate has been good. We have programs, individual face-to-face counseling. We have bedside counseling in the hospital. And we have a residential treatment program for people to come into a residential unit for 8 days of very intensive treatment. That's just the best we can do.
All right, Dr. Richard Hurd, so good to have you on the program. Thanks so much for coming back. Even though you're emeritus, you're still in the thick of it and helping people stop smoking.
That's the goal.
All right, The Truth About Tobacco with Dr. Richard Hurd. Look for a corrective statement or, as Dr. Hurd says, an admission of guilt on TV or in your newspaper. They're out there now. Dr. Hurd, thanks.